Hey everyone. In today's conversation on the Conflict Defense podcast, we talk about innovation in a slightly different way than we normally talk about it. Usually, innovation is a new technology or new application of that technology to deal with an advanced persistent threat. But this conversation is a little different because Cyvatar.AI is not bringing a new technology to market. What they've done is they've changed the business model of consulting to incentivize the outcomes so that the people that they're serving, the people that they're working with, know that they're paying for something, a flat fee subscription basis, and they're getting an outcome. They're getting a result of a more secure environment, not just hours spent on a problem. So while this is a small change and may get overlooked, it's a deeply profound change. And I think you'll really appreciate what they're trying to do over here. So Corey White is the CEO at Cyvatar.AI, and Craig Goodwin is the Chief Product Officer. And both of them together bring about 50 years worth of consulting experience, and then there's the whole team behind them. So please listen to this conversation because they've got a lot of insights from both their personal experience, they come from different walks of life inside the security community, and the customers that they're helping with. They distill some really good points on what we should all be doing about laying on those cybersecurity fundamentals, taking care of basics, continuous detection so we can have continuous remediation of the problem, right? It does us no good to say there's a problem and then get breached, i.e. Equifax. We need to detect the problem and fix it. And so Corey does a really good job of highlighting what are the key metrics that every security leader should have on their daily dashboard. Listen to this conversation with Corey and Craig. It's pretty fantastic. We go pretty deep into the weeds on a few areas. If at any point you say, I really like the content I heard in today's conversation, please hit the subscribe button below, give us a little like, and if something really jumps out and pops out, drop us a comment in the section below. I'll jump in and give you my feedback and thoughts there. Or let me know if you want to come join us over the Discord, and where we're starting up the new community where we can dive into these conversations in a better format. Listen up and enjoy today's conversation with Craig and Corey from Cyvatar.AI. Pioneering solutions, transformational technology, and inspirational leaders. I'm your host, Connor Sherman, and this is the Confident Defense Podcast. Welcome to the Confident Defense Podcast. I'm your host, Connor, and today we've got a really special treat. We've got the two co-founders of Cyvatar here to unpack what's going on in the cybersecurity community and how the professional services community can really step up and change their game. Corey, who has built his career in 25 years of hands-on leadership in both proactive security and incident response, where he serves as the SVP of Worldwide Consulting and the Chief Experience Officer at Cylance. Corey was also the co-founder of Cyvatar, where he now serves as the CEO. Craig has served as an executive security role at multiple international companies such as CDK Global, Fujitsu, and others. And he also sits on venture capital advisory boards and is the co-founder and chief product and strategy officer at Cyvatar. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey, Connor. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Connor.
So guys, I'm really excited to have both of you on here because it's so rare that we get two co-founders on a conversation at the same time. Usually we get like one side, like the left side of the brain or the right side of the brain. We don't get the whole brain trust on a one conversation. And Corey, when you and I got speaking a few weeks back, and I start to understand the kind of the weight of what you're doing with Cyvatar and how you really are bringing some transformation and innovation to the consulting space, I really wanted to get a longer form conversation where you can explain what you and the team are doing with Cyvatar and how this is, from the way I understand it, not just your average MSSP or your average VAR, but you guys are doing something really special here. So can you unpack what you're doing with Cyvatar and why this is not just another consulting firm?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, right? I can't believe it, but I've been doing this for 25 years. And after 25 years in cybersecurity, I pretty much have seen and done almost everything at every single level. And I looked and I noticed, I was like, oh my God, things that I've done are too slow and antiquated and just hard to get done. Cybersecurity is hard. But then I started looking at it from another lens and I realized it's not only hard, it's also broken. Like literally we were doing things in the most inefficient way just because we've always have done it that way. And so when I started figuring out how do we fix this and what is my next move, I have a thing about me. If I've already done something, I don't want to go and do it again. It's like I already kind of conquered that. I need to go and conquer something new or different, or I tend to get bored. And so I looked at the industry and I slowly started walking through, and I realized, and I walked through each one of them. Services, I had a good CISO friend of mine. She's like, Corey, I hadn't fixed the pen test from last year. It's the same stuff. But sure, I got to do it for compliance, checkbox, whatever, I'll do it. But I'm thinking that makes no sense. This is one of my good friends. So I'm not serving her properly. Why don't I give her continuous pen testing and then remediate what we find? So the next year we do it, it actually is clean. I was like, all right, let's fix services, because one time of anything in 2020 and beyond makes no sense. It needs to be continuous. So then I started thinking, yeah, go ahead. You have a question?
No, I was going to say, I think I love that sense of like, actually, how about we fix the problem? I know it sounds pretty
Yeah.
fundamental, but like the amount of tools and technology we have that tell you there is a problem, but don't actually help you fix it. It's mind-boggling how skewed our industry is.
Well, absolutely. And I saw firsthand at many different levels that at the end of the day, cybersecurity companies make more money off of the insecurity or the hacks that happen in cybersecurity than actually having their customers be secure. I mean, so you think about it from that perspective, there's no incentive to actually fix and remediate, even though it's the right thing to do. There's no real incentive there. And then, I'm gonna move on to kind of cybersecurity products. And this is Craig and I were at RSA, and we were, burnt. It was probably near the end. I think it was the Thursday before it was over. And I didn't walk the floor because I usually don't even walk the floor. It's just not a good use of my time. And I actually walked the floor, and I ran into a prospective customer of mine, and he was like, "I'm trying to find a company that does this, this, and this." And I walked it with him just to experience, that pain of going back and forth from different customers. And I realized they were all saying pretty much the same thing. Okay. Every different booth we went to, they were saying the same thing. He's like, Corey, I can't figure out which one is actually going to do what needs to get done. And then I actually asked one of the RSA, leaders, how many people attended? It was over 4,000 different companies there. And I realized it's way too saturated. How can a prospective customer figure out which vendor is the right one? And none of them are actually looking to solve the problem. So I was like, we got to fix that too. So there'll be comments on that one. But and Craig, I'm sure you have your own stories about that as well.
So this is really interesting. So you guys set up this consulting firm that was coming in really to bring innovation to the market because you were partnering companies that fix the problem, right? So it's like you come as a partner, you're continuous discovery, continuous remediation, but then also being outcomes based, right? Being a partner that really drives something else. So what was the other side of that? What was the impact of the Cvyatar has that like most organizations might be struggling? Most organizations don't bring to market.
Well, let's finish looking at the ecosystem here. We talked about services, we talked about product, and products don't really care about the outcome. They'll just sell you something and then move on. So those two areas are broken. Then when you look at the other areas, I'm like, well, maybe let's check out MSSP. I know a lot of them, maybe they're fixing it. Maybe they have something value where all these customers are going to MSSPs and MDR and XDR and all that is happening. So I started diving into it. MSSPs, MDRs, XDRs have almost zero interest in remediating those customers. I literally talked to one of them and they said, we make more money off of the incidents our customers have versus our MDR, MSSP business. And I was like, well, wait a second, this is your customer and you make money off of when they get hacked, more money off of that than you do of the managed service. And I said, well, do you remediate anything? And it's like, no, we don't actually remediate anything. We just send them alerts and you have to go figure it out. I know these customers. They don't have the expertise. They don't have the staff. They don't have the time to go and investigate everything that MSSP throws over the fence to them. And I was like, oh my God, another area that is broken. And then lastly, now let both of you guys chime in. I started diving into the extremely broken VAR market. And I started asking all of my CISO friends, hey, what do VARs do for you? What value is there? And they said, there's no value. The VA part of it, the value added part of it should just go away. They're just resellers. And I hate it. Just to get products, I had to go through these people that don't provide any value and they make the costs go up more. So that is broken. And so to realize that what Cyvatar actually had to become to solve this problem is a service company, a product/platform company, a VAR, and an MSSP to really solve these problems. And that's what we ended up being.
That's awesome. So what are some of the things that so let's get a little tangible here. So help me get my hands around this, that you're making this big change, you're making this platform change. What does it look like? Why is it different?
Yeah, absolutely. Many of you guys know I've spent a lot of time at Foundstone, pen testing and assessments and all that, and gap analysis. All that is just core into my blood, also incident response. But here's the deal. I was literally talking to a company, and they said they're spending $100,000 on their yearly pen test. And I said, okay, so you're spending $100,000. They're going to do the yearly pen test for you. And that includes obviously scanning and actual pen testing. And I said, do you fix the stuff that they find? And they're like, yeah, sometimes if it's critical, but we usually don't get to it. And so you're getting basically one scan, one pen test out of that. And they're like, yeah. And I said, wow, okay, what if for roughly that same price, you're getting continuous scanning and continuous remediation of what is found? I'm like, well, absolutely, that makes more sense. And I was like, well, why doesn't the rest of the industry do that? Why wouldn't you do that? And I said, well, nobody's doing that. And I said, well, somebody is doing it now. So when you take threat and vulnerability management, guaranteed, and I'm gonna break this down even further, guaranteed, whether it be the pen test and the continuous scanning. So if the company goes and buys a vulnerability scanner, and then they implemented it internal, external, and cloud, they take those scan results, and they got to work with all the internal groups to get the remediation done, the patching done, and the non-patch related remediation steps. And then they got to continually do that over time. That's a whole process for TVM. Guaranteed. And I've asked a lot of companies, where are you broken in that process? And I'll hear, oh, my guy hates to patch, or my person hates to patch. They don't patch on a regular basis. And so we don't usually get the patching done, or we hadn't set up our scans right. Well, nobody's done the analysis of the scans to figure out what needs to be fixed. Nobody's tracking the vulnerabilities. Somewhere along there, it's broken. So since cybersecurity is a process and not a product, why not have a threat and vulnerability management process where we bring in the products and the services and operationalize that whole thing, and then document day one, you had 1,000 vulnerabilities. After 30 days, you're down to 900, and that continually goes down, and you're continually getting remediated over time. And then you can clearly show the value of what we're doing on a continuous basis and a subscription versus a once a year pen test or trying to figure out how to do it yourself.
That's amazing. I mean, that's why it's innovative. That's why you're changing the game here, because the ability to continually measure value is pretty awesome. So let me go back to the other side. How did Corey, how did you and Craig meet? How did that come about? I mean, because you guys are doing something pretty special here, and so I'd like to know, like, how is it that you guys came to get started on this journey together?
Yeah, I'll let Craig tell this story because he always talks down to me. You're on the vendor side. You're that vendor side of it. So I'll let him, from the customer CISO side of it, talk to when he heard what we're doing. And I was going to do his part. I just hadn't gotten to it yet. But I'll let him jump in and say his background and why he was able to really augment and be the perfect match to what we were doing here at Cyvatar.
Right. Thanks, Corey. I'm not sure, Connor, if just by the balance of the amount of talking, you realize which side the vendor is versus the CISO.
Yeah, I kind of picking up on that.
You're picking up on that a little bit? I don't know, but no, all joking aside. So I think Corey said, like, we complement each other perfectly. Like Corey, a little bit longer than me because he's a little bit older. You wouldn't tell from the video because he looks young. My wife said to me the other day, I thought he was like younger than you. I was like, cheers for that. But
your wife. There you go. First drink across the pond. Make her a drink tonight. Thank you.
It won't be it's not the first. It won't be the last, right? But we we complement each other perfectly, Connor, and that's what's great about this partnership we've got going here. So, like Corey said, 20, 25 years on the vendor side. Like, I've got completely the opposite experience. So my background, as you mentioned in the beginning, chief security officer for US-based tech companies for like 20 years. And I saw all exactly the same problems that Corey's seeing, just from the other end, right? I couldn't deliver value to my stakeholders, whether those stakeholders were the board of directors, the executive team, even the customers that utilizing my company, I couldn't show them the trust. I couldn't demonstrate to them that I was doing the right things from a security perspective. And as a CISO, that's what you struggle with. If there's anything that's important to you as a CISO, is that trust word, right? And it doesn't matter if it's your board internally, if it's the other employees in the organization, or if it's external people. Like, I have to show as a CISO that I'm driving value and getting the right things out of my security program. And I struggled with that for the whole of the 20 years, right? I'm sure, people would say I did some good things. Like, every CISO comes in and makes incremental improvements. Like, I like to think I reduced the risk of organizations, but that wasn't without a huge struggle. It wasn't without 20 years of finding out what the right things to do were. It wasn't, 20 years of walking through RSA showrooms and knowing which ones to pick, not because of the marketing bump, So all of those things made it really difficult for me to drive outcomes. So, when me and Corey got together many years ago, I was a customer of his initially, back in my CDK days. So we'd known each other for a number of years, and we'd had a meeting of minds during that period. We both saw the same issues. We both saw the same problems from the opposite side of the table. And this year gone, when we met at RSA and Corey told me what he was doing with Cyvatar, I went, well, freaking hell, that's exactly what I've been thinking about doing. Like, that's exactly what I see as the issues with the industry, right? And with both of us together, both with the same mindset, both the same sides, different sides of the same coin, it just made perfect sense. And we went away. Corey said it was the end of RSA. I nearly didn't even have that beer with him, to be honest, because I was knackered. I'd had enough talking to vendors, but
yes.
Corey was a little bit different. He convinced me to have a beer. I remember he sent those ribs back that he was eating at least twice on that table. So I said, this is the guy. This is the guy.
Man of excellent taste. Yes. He's like, he knows what he wants. He's after a very particular thing.
Oh my God, why did I say that? Because I got a rant on that. Like, why do people smother ribs with sauce? That means you can't cook them. You should be sauce on the side so you can see the actual rib is done correctly. Then you can dip it. But it was just smothered in sauce. It was just a horrible thing. Anyway.
I'm seeing a YouTube show come out of this. Corey does ribs, or Corey cooks ribs, coming out of something.
It's not even like we made that up. That genuinely happened in the Thirsty Bear in RSA. And that was the moment I went, this is the guy. Like, this rib connoisseur is the guy I want to build a company with.
Many a good conversation has been had at the Thirsty Bear at RSA on a Thursday night. Yes. So I'm thinking fondly back to a couple of conversations a few years ago, pre-COVID and all that jazz. He was like, all right, humans talking and sharing a beer. Well, that's pretty fantastic. I love the fact you guys are coming at this to really disrupt the market, because that's something I've always struggled with, is when you're building, running security teams, like, you've got go back to exactly what you said, Craig. It's so difficult to demonstrate trust, because trust is an object between two. It's something that's developed organically between humans. And then we've tried to institutionalize it so that we can scale it. And so we've taken this non-technical thing, trust, which is organic, and we've tried to move it to a technical platform and scale that. And it's always so difficult to do that, especially when you're trying to, you're defending the house. And so you've got to keep, the adversary has to win once, and we have to win every single day, all the time. And it's such a hard thing to do. So having the right partners, having the right technology in place is the only way. It's such a helpful thing when actually everyone's pulling in that same direction versus just trying to take money out of your pockets. Right.
Well, yeah, and you think about, I always use my background's kind of security services and intelligence, right? And it's like in the intelligence community, we only hear about it when it goes wrong. And we've built up the same mentality within cybersecurity, right? You only really hear about the CISO that works for an organization when things go horribly wrong, right? And that's not the right way around. We need to, I think, you touched on it right there, the human element of trust. And we tried to, in the past, the way we tried to communicate that was through compliance, right? And we had these compliance standards, and we had a ton of different compliance standards, and you had to conform to that compliance standard. But we know over the time, operational security has slipped further and further away from what the compliance standard is asking you to do. And there's a massive belief that has really demeaned trust in cybersecurity, which is that compliance and security can't be achieved together. You say you're compliant, And it almost means a negative now. That means, well, you haven't bothered doing security properly then, because you've just ticked a box for compliance, right? And actually, you know, what me and Corey have set out to do and are doing with Cyvatar is bringing those two things closer together again. Because if you build good security, compliance is just a quid pro quo of that, right? Compliance is just a good side benefit of a decent security program. And if you set out with that mindset, you set out with the mindset that what you're trying to do with compliance is build trust, both internally and externally, and you build with that mentality in mind, you build a solid foundation of security, and you also build trust with your customers, your internal stakeholders, and everyone else around you. And that's what we're building at Cyvatar.
So let's talk about, like, I love the thing about trust, right? So let's just take on this little few more minutes to get your perspective on this. Because when we talk about trust, you said building it both internally and externally. And I wonder how you would tie that into culture and building a culture that fosters that as an outcome. And what has been your experience in what are the ways that works when you're trying to build that culture that results in trust, either between security and engineering, between compliance and the customer base, between other stakeholders? What are some of the cultural elements that help drive that?
Well, I think number one, particularly as an internal CISO, you've got to remember it's a human game, right? At the end of the day, this isn't a technology game. Corey mentioned it really early on. I know Bruce Snyder said it back in like 2000 or something, but you know, it's a process, it's not a product. And I'd go even a step further than that. You know, it's a human process, it's a business process, right? So you need to get the people on board. And the first, I think there was, I forget who wrote it, but there was always that seminal work on your first 90 days of a CISO. And the first thing you should do is buy a Starbucks card, right? Charge up your Starbucks card and just meet people, like build human relationships with the people you're going to interact with, because that's number one in creating a strong process. The other thing that I really believe in, and I think this happens in the future and is happening now, is just the decentralization of security, right? You can't sit in an ivory tower as a security function and expect to achieve things. And we're fundamentally building this into the model of Cyvatar as well. Developers need to develop and therefore need to be responsible for security. I always used to say to my bosses, like, my number one criteria for being successful is that as a CISO, I don't need a budget, right? I shouldn't need a budget to protect the organization, right? Because security is so embedded in the day-to-day processes of what that business does. Security isn't a separate menu item. It exists within development. It exists within project management. It exists within IT. And if I do myself out of the job as a centralized CISO, and I caveat that a little bit with CISOs are called different things in different places, do different jobs, right? But generally speaking, the traditional concept of a CISO, I don't need to protect the organization because I have built the culture in such a way that it is fundamentally embedded into everything that we do as a business, right? And that model is what we're taking to heart at Cyvatar. Like with our customers, we work directly. Corey hit the nail on the head. Remediation is not about the CISO remediating. It never was. It's about him building a culture and trust with the rest of the organization in order that they do what he needs them to do, what security needs them to do, what the business needs them to do. And we enable that decentralized model by working with the business and in the business to drive remediation and ultimately drive down risk and build trust, both internally and externally. So we've built that fabric of what I'm saying today is what we've built into Cyvatar.
I think that is the only way to win. Fundamentally, that has been my experience. I think that's the only way to win is when you have this decentralized, empowered security model that allows people to do their jobs faster and safer. So I am glad I am not the only one standing out holding that flag, and that there's somebody else in the industry who agrees that, like, yes, this is the path forward.
Yeah, just to chime on to that real quick, Connor, I think another way to look at it is thinking about the sales process. And of course, yeah, I'm on the vendor side, so I'll think about it from this way. But I remember telling a VC, actually at the same RSA, a good VC friend of mine, we were out to dinner, and I said, I'm not going to have salespeople. And he was like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm not going to have salespeople. So he falls out laughing after he gets through laughing for the last 2 or 3 minutes. And he's like, what do you mean, Corey? I said, not in this traditional sense. Because when you're selling, that means I have to convince this prospective customer that they need to buy what I'm selling. Versus if I talk to someone and they say, hey, Corey, yeah, we need a pen test. And I say, well, why do you need a pen test? Oh, because we need to be compliant. We need to be compliant with PCI or SOC 2 or whatever. We need to meet some PCI requirements. And I said, well, okay, well, let's get you to that outcome instead of selling you just a pen test. Because a pen test, a one-time pen test, is a means to that end, but I want to understand where is your end. So once we understand where our customers' actual goals are, then we are aligned with those goals, as opposed to aligning with, let me sell you one product, one service, and walk away. And so that is that trust, that is that partnership. So if once you figure out what people actually need, you don't have to convince them to buy anything. You're filling the gap of what they actually need, as opposed to, let me convince you you need something like this for your cybersecurity program. Most of the time, they already have an idea of what they need. We're just matching and getting them to that outcome. Does that make sense?
I'm with you, man. I wish everyone was doing this. Yeah, so aligning with a goal, because that's the outcome that we're after. As security leaders, we're trying to do something here. Like things, there are stepping stones to get there, and sometimes you grab partners to help you along that journey. Yeah, so aligning with something that's really driving down risk and going forward. Now, there was something I've been dying to ask you this, guy. So I'm going to take a complete non sequitur, just total tangent here. How did you get Steve Harvey to give a soundbite and tell everyone to keep on jumping? That's what I want to know as well from a culture perspective. It just sounds like as I was researching and getting to know you guys and get to know how as you express yourselves on social media and such, I'm like, Steve Harvey? Like, come on. You have like David Mead on there. You have other things, and you just really focus on like finding your why, jumping, and get moving forward. So tell me about Steve Harvey. How did that happen?
Steve reached out to us actually and said, I really love what you guys are doing at Cyvatar.
I believe that. I totally believe that.
I need to align my jump story with Cyvatar, because I think, no, unfortunately not. But
I'm actually, Connor, I'm actually not going to tell the secret, but what I will say is that, let's start with David Mead. David's been a friend for a while. I had him come and speak to my consulting organization back in 2018 in New Orleans. And it was, I actually wrote on LinkedIn, but I was going through the exercise with two other people. And then I looked up, just to kind of see what was going on. And David is walking around the ballroom at the hotel we're at, handing out tissues to people. And I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, something happened. If you're a leader of an organization, you don't want somebody's gotten hurt, something bad's happened. What's going on? So I look and I realize people were immersed in the activity. It was so emotional for men and women that, people were brought to tears. And we were bonding as a organization at that time. And Dave and I, we co-presented that whole day, like we were on the same page, lockstep. And it was about finding your why, your professional why, your personal why. But to be able to do that, you got to go deep. And David referenced starting out with, love professionally in his talk. And here's the thing, at Cyvatar, you got to be able to love your customers. You got to be able to actually care about them getting to outcomes, and not see them as just a means to an end for you to get your sales commission or grow your company. We actually want our customers to be successful. But here's the nuance that a lot of people miss. To actually have successful customer relationships, you have to have happy employees first. So you have happy employees and you have happy customers, and they go hand in hand. So that's David Mead and us working together. So when I reached out to David and like, hey, let's do this again, and all the credit goes to Craig and Aileen and the rest of the team. I was actually out on vacation. I just connected them, and then I come back and magic happens. Same thing with Steve Harvey. I've been a huge fan of his for years, but his jump video, and it probably was completely rehearsed, but he's in this parking lot and he's sitting there and he just goes off on this rant about jumping, and it is so true to life. We all have been through that. You take that jump, that leap of faith, and yeah, you get bruised up on the way down and go through trials and tribulations, but then you land on your feet. Yeah. That is just so beautiful. But that's startup world. And it's also life. you have to jump. And we all know a lot of people that don't jump in life. And this is a new business model, a new way of doing things. And it absolutely 1000% is better than what we used to do. But you have to jump to go and do it. And I equate this to, I mean, it sounds funny, but you take, Netflix in the late 90s. Like nobody was really using Netflix. But now if you don't use Netflix, it's like it's something wrong with you. But people had to jump and say, I'm gonna subscribe to this thing online and get movies sent to me and look at that was crazy. Everybody was going to Blockbuster Video and picking them up and getting charged late fees because I was always late. But in retrospect, it just makes a lot of sense. So this is just another one of those jumps. So getting Steve Harvey to speak about jumping in cybersecurity was a great honor, and we look to continue to bring motivational people to the market so that you listen to what we're doing and you match it with that motivation. There is really no difference. We're not trying to get out there and say, hey, we're going to make a ton of money. Success is the outcome as to who we are. So we will be successful. It is because we actually care about our customers, care about our employees, and we have jumped.
I love it, man. Because as he says, once you jump, everything is possible.
Everything is possible.
Yeah. So one of the things you guys have really done, I've really respected, is you've also developed this CXO Cyber Council, this way for titans of industry to kind of come together and start to help shape what the future world is going to look like. So I wonder, mind if you just do me a favor, kind of like level set and explain and unpack that CXO Cyber Council, kind of how it came to be and what you hope the outcomes of that council is to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give a couple examples of this. Now that Craig jumped in from a CISO perspective, former CISO perspective, but I don't know how many people out there are familiar with the brand FUBU, but if you're not, most people don't know what it actually stands for us, by us. And that ties back to the African American community where, keeping money into the community. Well, you look at cybersecurity, and cybersecurity, there's so many, a lot of these are my friends. There's so many vendors out there that have made their products and technology in a vacuum, meaning I know what they want and I'm not going to talk to people. And that'll work if you're Steve Jobs, 100%, right? But most people aren't Steve Jobs. So they're making these products and not actually asking the customer. Customers actually want value and remediation and something to really, quantify that they've spent their money appropriately, not sell them something and walk away. So I said, what is the best way to make this happen in cybersecurity? And first thing I always one of my standards in life is I don't know everything. And I'm far from knowing everything. But I know people. And I know people, what if I ask them, what do they want? What do they need from a cybersecurity company? And so I said, just build a CXO council and let them feed into what we're building into our platform, our products, and our services that we offer back to our customers. And that's why we do it. Once a month, we're out there asking them, is this right? Does this make sense to you? What are we missing? And that allowed us to know directionally we're going in the right direction. We aren't going to build something and not go through that council. And so some of our best ideas, this whole business model, I could go through every aspect of it, and I know Craig can as well. And we can talk about how each piece of it was developed. It's developed from feedback from our council and our peers in the industry. And so that's what it's about.
It's amazing how simple that concept is. Ask people for feedback and actually solve problems that are meaningful to people, but how rare it is to see that happen. So the CXO council you put together, how long has that been around? And kind of, are you drawing just from security leaders or also other technical leaders as well?
Yeah, great question. It's been around for about a year now. It started originally, I was just thinking CISOs. Now I realized, we have customers, the decision makers, especially in some of these small to medium enterprises. We have CFOs on there. We have CEOs on there. We have CTOs on there. So we have a combination of C-level executives that are on there. And if you notice, Connor, we have not added the technical person because we're focused really on business outcomes. And we do have, forums where we speak to our tactical teams and our customers, but really we want to make sure we're solving the business need and those business drivers. So we focused on different C-level executives to fill that need.
Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense. Now, I usually stay away from topical events during our conversations on this podcast because, innovation takes time. It has a longer time horizon than the recent news events. But right now, we're, as a industry, dealing with the fact that, like, FireEye just got their red team tools stolen. And then, like, a week later, SolarWinds got breached. That impacted 18,000 companies. And Corey, you've been doing this a long time, responding to breached organizations. So when these two events came together, I wanted to ask you kind of what your thoughts around the recent SolarWinds incident are, and what are some of the lessons that we as an industry can take from this, so it doesn't happen to us again.
Yeah. I'll try not to rant because I've literally been involved in hundreds and hundreds of incidents, and some very well-known ones. So here's the deal. What bothers me about our industry is that there's so many incident response companies that only care about coming in once you have an incident. So like literally, that's just like me coming in, your house has been broken into and all your stuff's been stolen, and then I'm coming in to help you. It bothers me because it's too late. And the industry is not proactive enough. One of the things I did at my last company was instead of incident response services, we had incident containment services, meaning let's contain and prevent it from happening. And so here at Cyvatar, we've been taking that to a whole nother level across all of our solutions. The goal is to get customers to a preventative state so that those incidents don't happen, and then maintain that state. Because incident response is based upon, hey, let's respond to it. And then MSSPs, we're monitoring alerts, and then we're going to tell you, hey, here's how you could be compromised, go fix this, or something has happened, go fix it. It is all too late. It's all that detect and respond mindset. Well, what if companies had actually patched themselves, had remediated themselves, and those vulnerabilities didn't exist? So let's talk about SolarWinds. So one of our customers actually, last week, we do scans and they continue with scanning, and the scans happen 4 times a day. So when the vulnerability got released, and obviously our vulnerabilities scanner picked it up, we didn't know that this customer had SolarWinds. They didn't tell us about it. They didn't mention that it was there. The IT guy had just installed it on a few systems, and it had no vulnerability, so it didn't show up anywhere. And so the minute it shows up as a vulnerability, we're scanning this particular customer every 4 hours. So within 4 hours of it being known and available as a critical vulnerability, we actually notified the customer, and within 6 hours, it was removed from their network. So when I think about these types of incidents, we actually have metrics inside of our organization. It's time to detection and time to remediation. And that's for everything. So now we know detected within 4 hours and remediated within 6. So that's how you quantify value. Those are the stories that I want to tell, versus now I got a bunch, I'm sure all of us got those emails from different vendors saying, hey, the SolarWinds breach, here's what you should do, here's what you should look for. Yeah. To me, those things don't actually matter. What matters is what actually happened. Finding it, remediating it, getting it taken care of. Because if I'm CISO and or CEO of a company, and I'm looking at my phone and I see this news, and I'm calling my IT person, hey, are we affected? What happened? And then they say, oh yeah, that was fixed a few hours ago. I want to hear that. I want to know Cyvatar took care of us. It was just part of everyday process. So that's how we think of it, and that's how we're approaching it.
Hey, Craig, what are your thoughts on this too?
I think
you've been in this seat. You've been on the side where we're responding and getting those emails.
Well, I think as a CISO, as an end user, like Corey said, you're the customer, right? I think we can get incredibly spun up, and it doesn't, it's good. It's good for us to strategize and to talk and theorize about like how you can fix cybersecurity and how, all these companies could have stopped this happening. The reality is you have a sphere of influence, right? For Cyvatar, that's going to be incredibly large. As an end user, which is the perspective I come from, you have a sphere of influence that you can influence, and it's your business, right? And like Corey says, you need to put yourself in a position for two things. One is you're focused on the things that you can change and make better, right? We bang on about the basics, getting the basics right. Okay, this was a little bit different, but for the most part, you reduce that risk systematically as you work your way through the basics that need to be in place. I mean, Connor, I'm sure you've had these conversations. I always use the example of like IT asset management, right? How many times have you sat on a call with a ton of CISOs, someone brings up IT asset management, everyone just kind of rolls their eyes and moves on really quickly.
It's like, yeah, it's fine over here. Don't look.
Yeah, we do it fine. What? Know what I've got? Yeah, definitely. Anyway, what did you have for dinner? You know, so you like just, and it's things like that, right? Where we need to go back to those basics and we need to focus on it. So what I tend to try not to do, yeah, of course, if there's a threat, there's a particular vulnerability, like Corey said, we'll find it in our organization and we'll fix it. But I would say your sphere of influence, what you focus on is still the same. Work your way through the basics and you're incrementally improving. I think it's everyone's fault, right? Corey mentioned it really early up front, the space is incredibly complex, 4,500 products, you know, it's not easy to know where to start. So therefore, you've just got to start somewhere. You've got to incrementally change. And too many CISOs, too many security end users are left in this analysis paralysis or this constant procrastination, right? Where they don't take any action because it's just too difficult. And chances are, right, you're not always going to get the right thing that you fix. But if you do something, you're more likely to be better off down that line than doing nothing at all. So find those basics, focus on what you need to focus on your sphere of influence, and just incrementally improve over time. So from a CISO's perspective, that's what I'd be looking at.
Amazing. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of wisdom in that incremental improvement. Let's take the ball 1 yard at a time down the field versus trying to make some big bang. Okay, I was here on day 0 and now on day 10 we're solved or something like that.
Don't let great be the enemy of good. My favorite saying, Corey's smiling because he knew I was going to get that in somewhere. Yeah. But too many people worry about great being the enemy of good, right? What's the gold plated solution to this? And therefore do nothing, right? But actually those incremental little improvements that move you towards a better place, no matter how small that better improvement is always better than doing nothing at all.
Yeah, 1000%. And Connor, I'm talking about what I heard today. I literally heard this today. There was a pretty well-known company out there, and they offer cybersecurity. But at the end of the day, it takes them 90 days to close on average the deal. Okay, so if it takes them 90 days to close a deal across all of their deals, think about it, large companies, POCs, and all the crap you have to go through to validate it. In 90 days, that is the average time that our customers get to value across our technology solutions, which we weren't even shorten that. So that same period, you could have bought the products, you could have installed, configured, assessed, and remediated yourself and gotten to a clean state and moved on to the next solution in that exact same time. So you think about cybersecurity and the way what we're doing and being a CISO, it's crazy that companies spend that much time just evaluating or in a sales process to buy a technology when with the model we've created in that exact same time, you could have gotten value that could have been measured across.
That's a really good point. Like just that time to value. So let's talk about that, right? So high growth companies, these generally take the form of startups, but it can really be anywhere that's just on that hyper investment scale. They're like, we've got our cash, we know we need to put it, go. What guidance would you give the executive team of those companies of like, where and why to invest in security?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got to, I mentioned it before, you've got to start with the basics, right? If you've done that, like a lot of our customers are in that space. A lot of our customers come to us and say, I just don't know where to start. Like I can go out and I can buy random products, right? I can say, who's shouting the loudest in the industry, right? There might be an endpoint protection solution, or, there might be an advanced threat protection solution, or there might be some kind of CASB solution. I don't know what it is. Whoever's shouting the loudest, whoever comes into my email box at the right time, I can go and buy random solutions and plug random holes, right? But actually, what you want to do is build a consistent program starting with the basics. So what we do is base it upon industry best practice standards. We take our experience, right? And we guide the customer through that. The other thing that normally comes up that I wanted to mention is the reasons for doing it, right? Because we're talking about breaches and we talk about the things that are high in everyone's mind. I love that story from the risk book about about 9/11, right? And how everyone after 9/11 refused to fly on a plane. And they all dived into their cars and started driving on the roads. And actually, the number of deaths as a result of road traffic accidents in the 5 to 6 months following 9/11 far outweighed the number of deaths that would ever have occurred by airline accident, right? So all those people needlessly died because of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And that's what we do with buying decisions in security. We see something like a SolarWinds, for example. Doesn't mean it's not a risk, but we immediately gravitate towards the solutions that will fix that bit. And we forget all of the fundamental building blocks that go into building a strong foundational security program. So what I say to all of those companies that we talk to is start with the basics, right? There is a roadmap. There is a way you should build your security program that makes you fundamentally more secure as a business and reduces your risk. Of course, you're not necessarily going to pick exactly what that point is that everyone happens to get hacked by, or the next thing that comes out in the media, but you're going to build a solid foundation, and your chances of being breached or your chances of having something go wrong dramatically reduce as you move through that chain. And like Corey said, doing something is always best than doing nothing, and do it quickly and start to move along that road, right? The other final thing I would hit on is, people buy out of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But what we're hearing more and more from customers, particularly in the space you're talking about, is actually back to that trust question. And actually the reason that they want to build a good cybersecurity program is because their customers are asking for it, which I think actually is a really good amount of traction in the industry, because the enterprise organizations are turning around, perhaps not for the right reasons always, but are turning around and saying to these smaller supply chain customers, if you want to work with us, if you want to be part of our supply chain, you need to do security properly, right? And Cyvatar's built all around that model. We'll build you that roadmap, we'll build you that journey, and we'll enable you to demonstrate to those enterprise customers that you are doing the right things from a cybersecurity perspective. And that then builds that roadmap, builds that trust, helps that organization to speed up their sales cycles as a result of having cybersecurity. And you know this, Connor, for decades we've talked in the industry. I've said it, it's become a bit of a cliche for me. Drive revenue with security. Like, oh yeah, made that up. It sounds like a lovely utopian place where cybersecurity is driving revenue for you. It genuinely is for some of our customers. Like, they wouldn't have closed deals that they are closing because we've built that cybersecurity program for them, and we've built that trust, right? And that's huge.
Yeah. No, and I think that's perfect, right? You've taken a security program, which has then said, hey, let's reduce risk, but let's also add value in that drive revenue with security. That is something that I must have subconsciously picked up from you at some RSA event or something, because I might have been saying it as well for a few years, because basically that's the idea, right? It's like we build something that's a value, it's an asset to the organization. And then we use that in every way possible, stopping bad guys, but also enabling the good ones.
100%.
That's great. Well, gents, there is something else that's just, I love how you guys have gone about building things and taking things on a pragmatic approach. You kind of solving for like first principle problems, and that you have created a YouTube channel, which is also trying to deal with the very fundamental things, which is trying to unfuck cybersecurity. So you got the Unfucking Cybersecurity show on YouTube. Talk to me about how that came about, because I just think it's fantastic. The candor and the realism that you guys have on that, and it's just it's a good thing for everyone to go check out. So how did that how did that come about?
We don't swear in England. It's the Queen's English, so it must have come from Corey.
Of course, blame me for it. Yes, I'll take all the credit for it. Yeah, it's funny that every single day, Craig and I, as co-founders, we talk. And then it turns into just a mini rant. At least one of us will have a mini rant about something. And so we just simply started recording what our mini rant is that is wrong with cybersecurity every single week, and putting it into a series. Because what we realized, and I know this is true, Connor, you probably have the same conversation with somebody at least once a week, that cybersecurity is fucked up. Yeah, it really is. We actually have to figure out, how do we fix those areas? And so what Cyvatar is actually doing is fixing it. We're talking about it, figuring out how can we fix it, and then we fix it. And that's it.
That's awesome. I mean, 'cause at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do. We're able to either fix the problem in front of us or go fix why we have the problem in the first place, right? Fix the symptom or fix the root cause. And I think if I remember correctly, you guys actually have a ebook that's coming out that's addressing some of like these fundamental reasons why cybersecurity is failing, right? So talk to me about that, and where could people grab that ebook you guys have released?
Yeah, well, we've built an ebook around essentially the unfucking, but a little bit more consumable for the more concerted audience. But yeah, I mean, the ebook is focused around those 8 reasons that cybersecurity are failing, right? Measurable time to value, not being able to get to remediation, like all those things we've talked about today and on the series are all in that short ebook. And I think it's just a great guide, particularly for organizations that haven't started on this journey yet, or are sat there saying, like, what am I going to buy? They're looking out at the industry, they're seeing MSSPs, they're seeing VARs, and they don't know where to start. Like, go and have a look, because it breaks it down. But we take a kind of slightly funny side to some of it, but then on the serious side, there's loads of really good tips in there. There's checklists in there. There's things that you can do, like the way you can challenge your vendors, for example. Like, you utilize this checklist, challenge your vendors about how they're providing value to you, right? So it's not just about Cyvatar, it's a call to action to the industry, call to action to customers. Like, if you're going to go and buy a product, make them show you the value that you get out of that product, right? And that's just one example, but there's a ton of other examples in there. Like I say, bit of a funny approach, but loads of really useful information as well. So go to our website and you can download that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
It's funny I have to jump in because we've all sat down and looked at Facebook and looked at all those fail videos that are always on there. And it's like, why can't we have that for cybersecurity? Because you got enough hacks to prove that it's a lot of failures. And so how can we talk about those failures in a funny way, but at the same time, talk about how you can actually fix it, challenge the industry so we don't have a failed video stream in cybersecurity. Because it's actually quite impactful. You didn't fall off a bike or skateboard here. People's lives are affected, their identities are affected. So, we really got to try to fix this and get it right.
Well, gentlemen, I couldn't agree with you more. I am so glad that both of you are leading the helm and really changing the direction of building this company that will hopefully change the direction of professional services forever. Because I think when everybody starts to see, I can have outcome-based security, I can have a fixed price modeling, I can have a clear, definitive roadmap of where I'm going in these time to value metrics. Like, that's just game. So guys, I just want to thank you so much for your time today, and really just thank you for the insights that you shared. And I will remind everyone who's listening to this, the links to everything that we've talked about will be in the show notes. And we are going to have them available kind of anywhere you're consuming this podcast, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. And then, of course, if anybody wants to connect with you guys a little bit in a further, deeper level, jump onto Twitter and LinkedIn as well. Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you again for your time. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, well, Connor, thank you so much.
Cheers, Connor.